Listen, alright, I've been away for a while, I'm well aware, and the main reason for that is because I would start recording a video and I'd go, wow, that was fucking shit, and then I would just delete it. And I didn't even think about, like, if I just spammed some memes in, it might have been better, but every time I recorded a video I was like, nah, this is too bad, let me just go fucking play Fall Guys instead. But I'm back, and we're gonna talk about something that I've delayed for just a little bit, just so that I could catch up on the reading that I wanted to do before I could talk about it, because I'm going to talk about a bunch of books at once, not just the one like I normally do, and this is the Nobel laureate for last year, Annie Ernaux. The main reason I wanted to focus on Nobel laureates, at least recently, is there's not a lot of people on YouTube that do, and I just find it interesting the people that they pick, because they're meant to summarize like an entire country or like a milieu, and sometimes the picks that they make for that are interesting and formative, and sometimes those picks are shit. And luckily, Annie Ernaux is in the former column. So I'd heard about her before she got the Nobel Prize because I had seen her movie that was based off one of her books, Happening. Maybe it'll come up on the screen here. It'll come up here, just here. I'll put a poster with the woman's face looking concerned. It'll just be here. Happening is about a woman getting an abortion, and that plot carries over into the movie. It's directed by Audrey Diwan, and it won the Golden Lion at Venice, which is the same thing that Joker won. Very similar movies. Both of them are abortions. I also knew Annie Ernaux as a potential favorite for the prize, just when I was looking at the betting odds, and what I saw just from a quick cursory Google was someone that really would win. Like, they picked someone that made sense within their kind of, their sort of logic and their previous choices. It's just pattern recognition of the kind of authors they pick. And she made a lot of sense. So I think the last winner of the Nobel Prize from France was Patrick Modiano, who is an author that has had exactly zero cultural relevance. And who I can't find any of his books anywhere, so I've just given up, I'm not going to bother. But Annie Ernaux was quite easy to find beforehand. So her style is very distinct, or at least the style that she's known for is very distinct. I read 4 of her books. I want to talk about 3 of them, because the 4th one I read a long time ago, and at least at this point, and I don't remember very well. I do want to talk about 3 of them. And just kind of go over why she won, and what makes her good, and kind of why she's unique. So Happening is a book about a woman who is probably meant to be Annie Ernaux herself, trying to get an abortion in France, where it was a very taboo, and I can't remember if it was illegal, but it was a very taboo thing to do. And while she's doing that, she's at university trying to study. So when I read this book, I had read it after I saw the movie, and a lot of the time I was inputting what I had seen onto the book, and I realized halfway through that that's really not what I meant to be doing. This is the one that is the most different from the other two. The other two are much broader and have a weirder implication. This one is very straightforward, almost so straightforward that it was kind of like bizarre. But it's very interesting. It's a very interesting book. Her whole premise, and I'll get into that more with the later ones, her whole idea is that she's trying to summarize the history of a people's, or an idea like sexuality, through herself and like a couple of key events. And in this case it's an abortion, and she goes into the whole role of women in France at that time, and the role of women in general, really. But she never extends too far with this, like I feel she does a couple of times in her other books. It's so matter-of-fact and straightforward that you kind of have to put onto it that fact of it. And she does a good job of letting you do that by just the way she writes. It's very clean. It's been translated really well. It's very direct. And it's quite harrowing. I mean, it's not as harrowing as the movie. In the movie, there's an extended sequence where she actually has the abortion, and it's like focused on her while she's in the bathroom. And am I just gonna get banned? Listen, it's like I guess it's educational. I don't know. I can't. It's hard to talk about. But there's an ending like 20 minutes in the movie that's really a really rough, hard watch, and it's great. It's really good for that. So it's a memory that she's invoked again after 20 years. That's just a random number. I don't know how long it actually was, but it was a long time. And she is trying to kind of get out of it what it meant to her now, what that meant. And she's trying to... It's clear that it's a kind of therapy for her. It reminded me a little bit, for whatever reason, of the movie Honey Boy. Just in the sense that it's like Shia LaBeouf talking about his youth in this really matter-of-fact way, and just like, this is what it was like, and this is what it means to me now as a person. And that's kind of what it is. And because of the way she does that, and when you tie it into her other books, where she's trying to imply herself as a historian of a country, where her experiences she's trying to imply on the rest of the nation, which is something she's allowed to do. When you take it and run with it like that, it becomes something that's really quite like transcendent. But I enjoy it. It's not entirely my cup of tea, that one. It's probably my least favorite of the three. The other two I found really, really ambitious, which we'll get to. But this one was very straightforward and simple, and that shocked me. So yeah, that's all I have to say about Happening, really. It wasn't... it doesn't stand out to me. When I talk about the other two, I'll be quoting and I'll be throwing things up at the screen. I can understand a lot of feminists tout very certain books, like they tout The Handmaid's Tale, which I detest. They tout... I don't know, The Yellow Notebook? I don't know, am I 50 for saying that? But I think that Happening is one that they should definitely tout, because it's totally, it's feminism in a more social, historical sense. It's feminism in a more abstract sense. But yeah, I would recommend it. It's good. So The Years is Annie Ernaux's kind of big masterpiece, everyone's calling it. It's her masterpiece! It's definitely her most ambitious, for sure. It's not the one I like the most, we'll talk about that in a bit, but it is very big and very broad and unbelievably interesting. I was reading it and it was bringing out a real subconscious feeling that's hard to explain. It's the feeling of time moving. It's the feeling of, like, a society changing, but she says it in a way that's so abstract. When you think of a society changing in a book, you're thinking of something more like War and Peace, or like Stalingrad, or something like that. Something really fucking big, and really, expansive, and it has a fuck ton of characters, and it's about these characters changing and getting killed, and you see the government changing around them. Some of those people might end up in government positions, you know, yada yada. So the way society is shown as changing in books is kind of, there's kind of a theme to it. There's a trend of, you know, you put these characters in certain situations, etc. You can think of some movie examples of similar things, like Reds is a good example, which is not a movie I like, but that's the example that I'm talking about, of like, if you're showing a character viewing history happen, they see significant events, and they're in the positions where things change. So they're in the government rooms when a legislation bill is passed, etc. It's Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump sponsors Apple. Forrest Gump meets Elvis Presley. You know, that's how books show it. And Annie Ernaux does not. And she does something that's I respect a lot more, which is something much more personal. And I think the fact that I'm not French made me enjoy the book more, and I'll get into that in a sec. So Annie Ernaux, it's a plotless book. It's a very nebulous book where she just brings in disparate references and things that happen to her. And she doesn't say that it happened to her. She uses different words. She says we, or they, or us. And she's trying to input herself in the collective. She's trying to make herself conform so hard that it becomes a history of a country what she's talking about. When she references a really distinct French movie and a really specific moment, it's obviously a personal moment that means something to her, like perhaps she saw it at a significant moment in her life, or perhaps it's just something that's stuck in her head, like how things stick in people's heads. But if she's conforming herself to become a member of the populace, what she's saying is that this moment is something that applies to everyone, that perhaps what this means to her, this moment in a movie, or in a book, or this moment on a sidewalk where she saw a guy walking around, that moment means something to everyone. It starts, I think the first 100 pages of the book are the best, and the ending's really good too, but the first 100 pages are kind of around wartime, and it's like just at the Second World War? I don't know French history. It's just it's just after the war, I think. It's like the war has ended, and then it's the society after the fact, but she doesn't go into the, and now we're repairing the buildings, and now our men are struggling to find work, yada yada. It's not like that. It's referenced that it's happening, and then by the way she's being disparate and talking about, now I saw this vending machine on the side of the road, and that was interesting to me, and that in a really abstract sort of umbrella way tells you everything about France's psychology as a nation after the event, after the World War. She would talk about herself as a child, and she was a child during this time, the war, and her focuses as a child are what are talked about in the book. And so she's more talking about a generation, honestly. Her focuses as a child of like, we just want to be grown up. We thought the men looked hot in their uniforms, yada yada yada. And that is the focus that she takes when she's saying us, we, they, outside of the war, into the war, and then further on from that. And when she becomes an adult, it becomes a lot like, whoa, fuck. The focus has gone a little bit, which was the bit I wasn't as attached to. But the first 100 pages, fuck man, they're really good. If you're gonna read the book, you should, like, and you don't like it after the first 100 pages, just stop. Like, you're not gonna get it. But yeah, as it was, when I was reading that, I totally understood why she got the Nobel. What it is the same thing that you give it to someone like, I guess someone like Tokarczuk, where what they're doing is, like in the books of Jacob, or like Primeval and Other Times is the better example of that. They are just summarizing the history of their country, but in a way that's so specific and so, like, bizarre that it becomes something really artful and accessible in that way. If it's talking really specifically about events that happened in Poland, in Tokarczuk's, like, sense, if she's talking about the Polish government and them passing bills that changed the country, that's not artistic, that's not psychological. But because of the way that she talks about things in Primeval and Other Times, and the way that Annie Ernaux talks about things in The Years, it becomes a little different. A little more heady and emotive and strange. I really love her writing. I think she's super unique. And she's a good winner. She's definitely better than fucking Abdul Razak Gurna. What the fuck was that? The structure of the book, like, written out wise, I was getting a little annoyed by. Every now and again, like, she would write in paragraphs. You can tell she wrote it over a long period of time too. She'd write in paragraphs. Occasionally, she'd describe Paris in a certain way, and then she'd cut to hyphen and then certain specific example, hyphen and then certain specific example. The first couple of pages are the best example of that. Let me just find it. Yeah, so she'll say, thousands of words will suddenly be deleted, the ones that we used to name things, faces, acts, and feelings, to put the world in order, etc. And then she'll go hyphen, slogans, graffiti in public toilets, hyphen, turns of phrase that others use without a thought, hyphen, the words of men in bed at night, hyphen, to exist is to drink oneself without thirst, hyphen, what were you doing on September 11th, 2001, etc. So some of the structure feels a little pretentious, and I think if you read that and you called it that, it would be hard to argue with that if that's like your experience of it. I wouldn't disagree. It's more that you just kind of have to resign yourself to it. You have to kind of let it in, and once you do, it becomes really really interesting. And I think if I knew more about French history, I would have more of a problem with the way that she describes it. I'd be like, yeah, but that wasn't what I was feeling. Like, I was in the war and it was hell. Why is she talking about a schoolgirl's experience? Why is she talking about this specific feeling of men that she has? This doesn't represent our country. And I can understand that as well. But as someone who doesn't understand French history and is looking for this as more like a describing the psychology of a country, I like it. It's good. Me likey. Yeah, for example, you can tell where in her writing there are gaps, and she's trying to fill the gaps like intentionally. So one example that I remember being like, what, is when she goes, this is like 100 pages in, among her memories of the years that have just gone by, she finds none she considers to be an image of happiness, hyphen, the winter of 1969 to 70. And then she describes it a little bit and then she moves on, and I'm like, oh fuck, that was 2 years! Oh my god. She's also a really good writer. Like, her examples are really evocative and good. It's not just a grocery list. It's a very evocative and like interesting book. It's not so boring as all that. Every now and again there'll be like a sentence or so, and of course this is translation too, but there'll be like a sentence or a paragraph that'll make me go, wow, that was really like well written and really sort of a complicated way of saying something simply. And I really appreciate that she did that, and I can understand how if you're writing something over a long period of time and you like cut it down to the best, you're gonna get something that's good, and this is the best of the cuts, I feel like. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that didn't go into this book, personally, that she cut out because it messed with the pacing, or she couldn't find a better way to write it. That's really what it felt like to me, and I appreciate how thoroughly edited it felt like. There's a lot of, like, reference to sex in this book. It's a very, like, sexually charged book, especially in the first half. The second half it eases off a little bit, but even so, there's a lot of references to, like, erotic films and, like, things men do that she finds hot. And I can't say if I was writing this I would be above that, to be honest. I would definitely do something like that. I'd be like, oh, General Tega in Wednesday. I'm gonna fucking kill myself. But the references to that, again, hit at the personal part of it, and it's what makes her such a feminist writer, at least in my eyes. She seems like a really truly feminist writer in that she is focused on the experience of women in like every single possible capacity. And when she is like talking about men, it's kind of cursory. She's not really thinking about men in the way that other feminist authors kind of dwell over them, you know? She's so focused on women's agency in history that it's just kind of what... It's just her focus, like that's just what she's interested in. And I respect that she doesn't try to go out of her way to write something different. She just writes about what she knows to like an obsessive degree. And we on the threshold of the 1980s, when we would enter our 40th year, were suffused with a weary sweetness that came of accomplished tradition, and gazed around the table of faces dark against the light. For a moment we were struck by the strangeness of repeating a ritual in which we now occupied the middle position between two generations. We were overcome with a kind of reverse vertigo, brought on by immutability, as if nothing in society had moved. In the hubbub of voices, which we suddenly perceived as detached from the bodies, we knew that a family meal was a place where one could go mad without warning, and push the table over, screaming. It's pretty good. It's also interesting to me how the world widens for her as the book goes on. Pretty much the moment that the Berlin Wall falls in the book is when the book kind of opens up to her. I mean, it was already a little bit open, but she's talking about a lot of other cultures, and you can see the way that France is taking in culture in itself. It's taking in these different things. She's talking about things she sees on the news now in different countries, as opposed to in the first half of the book where everything she references is French, basically, and everything that happens to her is from the French lens. As it goes on and the society becomes more globalized, you can see that in the book, and I think that's like crazy, a crazy thing to think about. And because of the way she structures it as just moments that happen to her, or just examples every 6 months in her life, it comes across really, really distinctly, and it's a crazy feeling, and I get why the Nobel Prize loved it, of course. The moon, when we looked up at night, shone fixedly on billions of people, a world whose vastness and teeming activity we could feel inside. Consciousness stretched across the total space of the planet towards other galaxies. The infinite ceased to be imaginary. That is why it seemed inconceivable that one day we would die. If we tried to enumerate the things that happened outside us after September 11, we saw a rash of swift-moving events, a series of expectations and fears, interminable times and explosions that paralyzed or deeply distressed us. Nothing will be as it was before was the dominant theme, and then disappeared, forgotten, unresolved, and commemorated a year or even a month later, as if they were ancient history. So that is what the book is about, in summary. Fuck, I sounded so pretentious there, oh my god. It's definitely a book that you have to read to kind of get what I'm talking about. I understand that this was more of a rant. I deliberately wanted to walk into her structurelessly. I didn't want to talk about her with dot points. I haven't got anything anywhere with notes. I just wanted to talk about what I remembered about the books in an attempt to mimic the style. And I think that The Years is really good. It's the one I have the most to say about. But it's not my favourite. The one that stood out to me the most is the one we're going to talk about last, which is a book called Exteriors. So Exteriors is a very, very weird book indeed. It's about her experiences on public transport. What it is it's a series of vignettes of things that happened to her while she was on public transport or in grocery stores or in public places. It's almost identical in style to The Years in that it's just events that happened, and I struggle to understand why that stuff wasn't just in The Years, but she's taken out certain things that relate to the public. It's a book about social dynamics and class above anything else. The Years is a book about an entire country and the history of it. The Exteriors is a book more about the sort of social structure of the country at the time, and what was expected of people. Does that make sense? It's really hard to explain. This is genuinely hard. I hope you guys can appreciate, like if the comments are like, you interpreted this wrong. Yeah, probably. I probably did. Please help me. Exteriors I remember as having like one of the best openings, or like best opening couple of pages I've read in a long time. It opens with this discussion of like graffiti she sees, and then it's a woman going into an ambulance, and just from that I was like, oh, this book's gonna be awesome, because I immediately got what she was trying to do and like the theme of it, and she just ran with it the whole time. And it was very, very spicy, very good. And she would point to things like, she'd point to a grandmother and a grandson arguing on a train. She'd point to someone buying groceries. And these examples she would draw together to say something about social structure in its kind of unconscious state, where it's just people existing in day-to-day lives, and showing the structure of their country through that, through just the unconscious acceptance of it. And every now and again she'd bring in some example of something crazy, or she'd note down some graffiti that she sees, and it was less typified by events like The Years is. There's no reference to the Berlin Wall, there's no reference to September 11th, at least not from what I remember. It's more about just people living, just people getting the metro, and that's why I empathized with that one more. I just respected the goal of this one a little bit more, even though I think The Years is incredibly ambitious. I just found myself connecting more to Exteriors because it was just more like the life that I lead. When she's like, I saw this stupid thing on the train, I'm like, yeah. The only thing I didn't like about Exteriors was, by the end, she kept talking more and more about her personal role in it, and I wanted her to do that less. And when she does it in The Years, it's perfectly acceptable because she's just consistent with it, but it seemed to me like halfway through, and this book is only like 100 pages, by about like page 50 or something, she'd start going on about, I started to wonder if this was an odd thing that I was doing, recording the lives of everyday people, and I'm like, I don't really need to know what you think of it though. But then everything around that was like perfect and really fun and so evocative, and I could just see it happening in front of me and going, that's... When you connect that to other things that happen in your life 5 or 6 years apart, you can see how a culture operates. So anyway, in summary, I think she's really great, and I think if you haven't read any of her books, you should. They're very accessible. They're easy to read for sure. They're not hard, like hard going. They're very short, and you will get a lot out of them. I guarantee it. I think if you're going to start with one, I think Happening is the one you should start with. Just because if you like that, then you're more open to liking something like The Years. I think if you start with The Years, you're just going to be like, eh. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But I think if you like Happening, you're going to be more receptive to the other ones. I think she's a very good winner of the Nobel. She's definitely the best winner of the last 5 years. I think Tokarczuk won in 2017. And she's a good winner that is definitely in line with the Nobel's kind of thinking about what they want to award. They want to award an author's entire work, which she has a really like distinct few books that connect and have a theme, and she is very important to French cultural history, at least from like a separated third party's perspective. So she's a really good winner. I hope that they pick another person that's good this year, and not fucking Murakami. My breasts are really small, don't you think? I can't help thinking about my breasts, Marie said after a while. That's all I think about, pretty much. Is that weird? Thank you, Murakami. Very cool. I love how every video I do just turns into, like, Murakami shitting. It saddened her to think that these women were forever gone from the world, and she mourned their lovely breasts. Breasts that had vanished without a trace. Women are all born with a special independent organ that allows them to lie. All women tell lies, and they lie about important things. They can still have a clear conscience and never lose sleep over anything they say. Alright, now you have to guess, was that Murakami or was that Ernaux? Which one was it? Thank you guys for watching. Tell me down in the comments what you think of Annie Ernaux's books. I've seen you guys leave some comments on my review of the last Nobel winner, Abdulrazak Gurna's book, and my Nobel Literature predictions video. Those have both been doing pretty well. Well enough that I was shocked. So thank you guys for that. I've read those comments. Thank you. It's very nice that you guys are putting your own opinions out there for me. So please feel free to do that for her as well. Thank you for watching. Oui, oui. Okay, Google, what is French for fucking smash the like button? Putain de casser le bouton j'aime.